So welcome everybody to the University of Montana Happiness Workshop. I am thrilled that you guys have all decided to do this, and I hope that it's worthwhile for you. I hope, as Tom and I were talking at the very beginning, that you might even feel happier after we're finished. This is really going to be about how to apply evidence-based happiness interventions to yourself and to your clients or students with whom you're working. And so that is the focus. And so, but to start, I want you to just feel this, right? Just notice this. In fact, I'm going to take it a little bit further. I'm going to stop this sharing and I'm going to share a different screen because I know how to do that. Because technology, I can handle technology. And I want you just to, we're going to do about just 30 seconds of this thing. And I will quickly make it big and we'll start it. Just watch this and let yourself feel. All right, that's it. You only get a little bit. That first baby laughing is maybe, I just feel like I want to be hysterical right along with her. It is so fantastic. All right, so back to the other screen. And in addition to watching babies laughing and internet videos, this is the plan. We're going to define happiness, and we'll talk a bit off and on about why it's so hard to sustain. It is so hard. Now, if you were to continue watching that baby, you would find, and those of you who are parents out there listening, you guys know this, as the children's complete joy increases as the night goes on, oftentimes, you know, there's going to be a crash. And it seems to be the way humans are built emotionally. Again, we'll talk a bit more about that. But when things go up emotionally, it's really hard to sustain forever because oftentimes we come crashing down and can experience the other side, the less happy side. We'll review and experience some evidence-based happiness interventions. That does mean, yes, volunteering. I'm looking forward to how many of you will be volunteering. I know you're thinking about it already, and some of you are probably thinking, I cannot wait to volunteer. We're going to discuss how to apply the interventions to yourself and clients and students. We're going to nurture our experimental or scientific mindset. We're going to take away some new skills. That's what we'll do. And that's the plan. What you're going to need is to keep yourself engaged and actively participate. So be open to experiences. And again, that means volunteering. Here's the deal. But today is a little different. You guys know in theories, I ask for volunteers, and oftentimes there's a long wait while everybody hopes that someone else will volunteer. Today, I am going to call some people out to volunteer with me. Now, I know that makes you anxious. There is always, you have the right to refuse, but I guarantee you all of the volunteer experiences, none of them are designed to be at all embarrassing or humiliating or anything like that. In fact, I will do my best to communicate respectfully, and I hope that you guys will also. That's another thing that we all need. We always need that. Of course, I've never had a class or a workshop where people didn't communicate respectfully. So I feel silly saying that, but we should all bring that always. All right, so here's the true confession is that I've done a bait and switch with you guys. I am not going to talk today about that kind of smiley, hedonistic, material happiness. And part of the reason I'm not talking about that is that's not really what we're talking about when we say happiness. We're designing a thing called the Montana Happiness Project, and we're getting some support and able to work with the Big Sky Youth Empowerment Program on that. And but happiness doesn't just mean to be smiley and feel good. it doesn't last. And material happiness in particular, if you think to yourself, I just want that car. Once you get it, in a few months, you're going to want something more. Or if you think, oh, if I just get married and in a loving relationship, that's all I need. Well, as it turns out, once that happens, sure, you're happy for a while, but there's a thing called hedonic adaptation. In other words, we get used to the good things in our lives, and then we want more. And also, there's this thing called emotional opponent process theory, and that's when, with children, but also with adults, what goes up must come down, and we often experience the negative as intensely as we experience the positive. Now, in defining happiness, what I'm really talking about is eudaimonic happiness. Eudaimonia is a word from Aristotle, and that involves living well, and living well physically, psychologically, socially, spiritually, emotionally, and more. And as we talk about defining happiness and we talk about applying it to ourselves and with our clients, one of the things that Rita and I discovered recently is that after working a lot in the area of suicide assessment and suicide treatment, it was really natural for us to say, hey, let's focus on something a little more positive. Let's focus on happiness. And so in some ways, the kinds of interventions we talk about are not only good for those of us who are not depressed, but they can be really important to people who are depressed and possibly even people who are feeling suicidal, because it is a natural other side of the experience of depression and suicidality. The four big principles before we jump in some of the big content. Nothing works for everyone. All right, so when I say evidence-based interventions, evidence-based happiness interventions, what that means is that there's some science behind it, right? And that's great. But the fact is, any study you do, it just doesn't work for everyone. And so if we do a research study on gratitude and we find that gratitude improves mood significantly, well, for some people, it doesn't. And so what's important is for us to pick a tool or an intervention and to practice it with an experimental mindset. So in other words, if Emmy picks one to use, and Emmy, you're on my screen, so I thought of you, you're going to want to think, oh, well, what tool or intervention do I want to use with myself or with my client or with the student with whom I'm working? But approach it as, I don't know for sure if this will work, but it has worked for other people. And so I'll try it, I'll track it, I'll see if in fact it works. The third principle is to build on strengths and past successes. Okay. And so if Emmy is working on something, she might not want to work on something that's completely out of her skill set. She might want to focus on something that she already has some strength around. And so maybe she's already been working on mindfulness meditation and it's something that she can build on. On the other hand, if Erica has not done any mindfulness meditation, she might not want to pick that as something that she develops and counts on having work for her quickly if she's beginning as a new mindfulness meditator. So it's good to build on our strengths and past successes. That doesn't mean you shouldn't start or try something new, but it's good to have reasonable expectations when you try something new. And the fourth principle is whether it's ourselves or our clients and students, we should be thinking about and focusing on goals. And those goals might include mindfulness or calmness, anxiety reduction. It could include sleep or sleeping better. It could involve improving the mood that you or your clients are experiencing. And so it could involve improving satisfaction with life and all those things and more, of course. But it's nice to align the intervention with a problem and a goal so that people can begin to work on those things. Now, here's a nice example of prehistoric or pre-evidence-based tools. And so you can see the one prehistoric guy saying to the other one who's holding the toolbox, "So what's this?" I asked for a hammer. A hammer? This is a crescent wrench. Well, maybe it's a hammer. Damn these stone tools. So before we really started working on this whole issue of positive psychology and positive psychology interventions, we really often didn't know for sure what we're doing, but now we actually have evidence-based approaches. So let's try them out. Let's experience happiness. And you can see there, we've got some of your pets there featured to help us launch into practicing these happiness strategies. All right. In the beginning, a man named Martin Seligman, way back in 1998, decided that the American Psychological Association had focused way too much on psychopathology. So that was 1998. So there was a whole century of focusing on psychopathology and focusing on what's wrong with people. Well, he switched it around and said, we need to have a year at least while I'm president where we focus on positive psychology and positive psychology interventions. And the very first one he developed, very, very simple. I'm going to need a volunteer for this in a minute, so be thinking about who wants to volunteer. But here's the way it goes. And you guys know, let me just take a quick survey of you all. You guys know, when you lie down to go to bed, what sorts of thoughts usually come into your mind? Often at the end of the day, we're doing a review or a preview, okay? And so what Seligman developed is a thing called the 3 good things technique. He also sometimes calls it the 3 blessings technique. And here's what it does, or here's what it is. You're supposed to write down or think about 3 good things that happened during the day. Obviously, this should be late in the evening, maybe as you're going to bed, maybe a little before that. So you write down or think about 3 good things. And after you've identified the 3 good things, then you ask yourself the question, why did those 3 good things happen? Now, Seligman says the research on this, and he did a lot of research on this, both with people who had clinical depression and people who did not. And he found that both groups had significant improvements in their mood, as well as a number of other outcome measures. But obviously, this is a super simple activity, and it's something that most of us could weave in to our evening ritual because it doesn't take very long. You don't even have to write it down. You can just sit and think about it. Here are a couple of visuals on what often happens to people when you go to bed. And you can see Charlie Brown saying, sometimes I lie awake at night and I ask, where have I gone wrong? And then a voice says to me, this is going to take more than one night. And so that's a great example of the review. And I know for myself that when I lay down, I am often reviewing, like I might say to myself, oh no, I should never have, I shouldn't have mentioned Emmy's name when I was doing the workshop. She didn't give me permission to mention her name. Of course, it's on her little rectangle, but I might start thinking about all the things that I did wrong. And I am guessing if I did a survey with you guys and I could see you all, you would mostly have those kinds of experiences. The alternative is we often have a preview experience. We preview all the things that make us feel nervous about the next day or the next week or the next month, and chew on those things. So I'm ready for the first demonstration, but before we do a demonstration, I want to just say, again, all volunteers will be incredibly appreciated. And all I'm going to do is to talk. We'll have a little conversation. It'll be pretty short. And then while we're talking, the volunteer, all I'm requiring is that we react and converse together, and that you engage in a self-reflection process along with me, as I will be thinking about and noticing what's going on inside of me. I want you guys to think about, the volunteers, think about what's happening inside of you. And then we'll debrief and take questions from everyone. Many of you who are in the theories class know how this goes. And so let me stop the share. And let me say, I got you guys all on my checkerboard screen now, so I can make eye contact with everybody. Who would like to volunteer to do the 3 good things?
I've got you, John.
Rachel. Yes. Thanks, Rachel. So Rachel signed up twice for the workshop, and so I told her that the only downside of that was she had to participate twice as much as she might have ordinarily. And so
He did say that.
I did. And look at you. You are. I'm going to move this to my speaker view so that I can just mostly focus in on you. So, hi, Rachel. Thank you so much.
Hi, John.
For volunteering.
Of course.
I'm going to ask you the 3 good things questions and just explore them a little bit with you. And obviously, it's not the end of the day, but if you think back to this day, and you can even think back to yesterday if you want, what are 3 good things that happened?
3 good things. Can they be really simple? Like I rode my bike?
They can be whatever you want them to be.
Okay. I rode my bike. I made broccoli cheese soup.
Ah.
And I did a really good mindfulness meditation, a group mindfulness meditation.
All right. So broccoli cheese soup, rode your bike, group mindfulness meditation.
Yes.
Okay. Now, why did those things happen? What made them happen?
Well, I rode my bike because that's how I get to work. I made broccoli cheese soup because it was really cold yesterday and I was craving it. And I did the mindfulness meditation with a group because I wanted to try sharing in that connection because I usually practice on my own.
Mm-hmm. So it was maybe a new thing to try it with a group?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it was maybe in your mind, you thought, I do this myself. Maybe I'll experiment and try this with a group.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why that happened. And you rode your bike just because you do. That's how you get to work.
Yes.
The broccoli cheese soup, it sounds like it had to do with you noticing and being aware of inside of yourself something you wanted.
I think so, yeah, because I did not feel like cooking, but I really wanted soup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, soup season, I think. And so let's talk about the meditation thing a little bit more. What made it so you could practice this thing that you usually only do yourself with a whole group?
Well, I think with a lot of the uncontrollable factors that are going on, it's been a little harder for me to be consistent with my own practice. And so I signed up for this group meditation practice that happens every week, and I just haven't been able to fit it in with my class and work schedule. However, I kind of miss connection, and it is kind of at a time where I could like take a lunch. So I just ate earlier and then was able to attend this hour group practice.
Nice, nice. And so again, I hear that it's partly bubbling up from your own awareness of something you want or need in your life?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm going to call timeout now, and we're going to go back to the checkerboard screen. And then I want to debrief a little bit with you. So I'll talk a little bit more with you and ask you some questions. But I also, if it's okay with you, is it all right if other people have questions too?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Now I'm going to go back to the gallery view. So everybody, Rachel. So now I wanted Rachel to say things like, Rachel, you like took your life by the horns and you made those things happen, right? So I, as another person interacting with you, I wanted to really empower you and say, whoa, look at that. Look at what you did. Okay. Now, I want to know what was going on inside of you as you were sharing those things, other than maybe feeling a little anxious about doing it in front of, 30 people or whatever we have here.
Well, it was hard to pick only 3.
So nice.
And then so I just kind of picked the first 3 that came to mind. And as we were talking about them, I did feel empowered, even though you're like not saying you're grabbing life by the horns. I still felt like, oh yeah, I do these things. And I am aware of it. And it is nice.
Yeah. And so when I emphasized your own self-awareness as being one of the ways in which you're making these things happen, so that felt okay?
Yeah, for sure.
Good. Any kind of questions or doubts come up as we were talking?
Questions or doubts? I don't think so.
Okay, great. We're going to talk about that a little later, about how there is sometimes a natural process when you're trying to do something that's positive. There's this sort of natural thing that sometimes happens to people in that we kind of spoil them. Like we start to say something positive and then we're thinking, well, yeah, but I mean, it wasn't that good a broccoli soup, or, it's like we start to kind of downplay them quickly in our brain, even as we're saying them. And so I want to just check on that. And so it sounds like that didn't happen for you. And I'm just super happy that you felt a little bit empowered. And now clearly this is not the kind of thing that Rachel and I do together. And then suddenly there's like, oh, my life is better, right? This is a practice. Rachel would do it every evening, every night, and she would begin to just make that a habit in her life, in that kind of eudaimonic happiness way of, I'm practicing something that I think will help me focus on my own empowerment, my own awareness, and my own ability to create good things in my life. Other people have any questions for Rachel or for me about this very simple 3 good things activity? This is when anyone could speak.
I appreciate that you mentioned it can be easy to quickly discount your good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that could be especially tricky.
Well, and I love the word that you used just now, tricky. It's, in Jungian psychology, there's this thing called the trickster. And the trickster is sort of our own internal archetype that messes with us, really, sometimes. Can appear in dreams as this kind of opposing figure, or this really joker who's trying to pull things over on us and spoiling things sometimes. And I do think it's just a natural part of the human psyche for us to often not be able to bask in our own glory for very long without starting to spoil it. Yeah.
Yeah, now that you brought it up, I can kind of recall like that voice saying like, well, are you self-aware? But I call out that ego a lot. So if it came up, I was just like, no, you are self-aware.
Well, that's great that you have a way of dealing with that little message that pops into your brain. You know, it's like, am I really self-aware? Or couldn't I be more self-aware? Or if I was really, it's like all those things can start to come. And it's so nice for you to be able to just nudge it back and say, oh, no, yeah, I certainly do. There's evidence that I have it. I got self-awareness.
Brene Brown talks about that thing, that spoiling thing. I can't remember the name of it. Does anybody remember the name of it? She calls it, it's one of the defense mechanisms.
I unfortunately don't remember myself. I can only, yeah. And there is a more formal term for it in cognitive therapy. And I've always used spoiling, and then I learned the more formal term, and then I forgot it, which I am going to use some good self-talk with myself now to say that it's okay, John, not to know what Brene Brown calls it, and it's okay to not know what the cognitive therapists call it. So maybe someone will find it, Wendy, and put it in the chat box. Yeah.
It's not very clever. It's not very clever. I found it. It says not letting ourselves feel joy. not a really like coinable term. Oh well.
But it contains that same kind of message, right? That we somehow pull ourselves back from experiencing some positivity. Yeah. Excellent. You guys, I'm going to go back now to my PowerPoint again, and we will keep on rolling. So the first is the 3 good things. Now, people have speculated as to why does it work. Of course, I've already mentioned that we kind of inevitably and naturally embark on a negative depressive review or an anxiety-provoking anticipatory preview. But the thinking 3 good things, just the thoughts of the broccoli cheese soup, the bike riding, the group meditation, just those concrete thoughts kind of shift people partway into the positive, as long as they don't get hit by a lot of negative rebuttals to those. But it seems like I think the real magic in this is the identifying why they happened. I think that activates a kind of a part of our brain where we engage in some problem solving. Now, usually the problem solving is all about the negativity, the things we did wrong or the things that might go wrong. But to be able to activate a problem solving in terms of searching for explanations for good things really kind of tosses a wrench into that usual negativity. So that's 3 good things, a very simple, straightforward approach. Certainly not magical. It's something people need to practice. And Seligman says most people who do it want to keep doing it. Now, Rita and I aren't exactly that certain. Seligman made it up, so I think he really likes it. But I do think it's a useful practice. Also illustrates this sort of tug-of-war that happens in our brains, that what we attend to, and it's easy to attend to the negative, and it's harder, I think, for many people, especially if there's any kind of depressive or anxiety stuff going on, to pay attention to the positive. So it sort of illustrates how much of a challenge it is, and yet we need to lean toward the positive. The second approach in terms of positive psychology and interventions is called attention training or attentional control. And attentional control, or often referred to as mindfulness or meditation, is just something that, and I know this maybe sounds kind of negative, but it's just something that often fails. Nearly always we fail, because really the way the brain seems to be hooked up is that we pay attention to all kinds of things. If it starts snowing, we notice it's snowing. If we hear a song on the radio, we start to get into that song on the radio. And so it's easy for our mind to just go to different spots naturally. But a Harvard study of over 2,000 students found that when the students paid attention to what they were doing and were less distracted in the moment, they had consistently better happiness ratings. Now, John Kabat-Zinn, who really sort of ushered in the modern approach to mindfulness meditation, has this thing that he talks about, an anecdote of when he's cleaning the stove, and that he hates to clean the stove, but that if he finds that he completely gets absorbed in cleaning the stove and he is just at one with that particular experience, that the time passes much more quickly and it's actually relatively pleasant. So that idea that we can do the mundane thing and really be absorbed by it completely and pay attention to it as much as we can. And when I say completely, I don't really mean it, because we can't completely be successful at that. But there's pretty good evidence that that helps us feel happier. Now, the cool thing is we have amazing brains. You guys all have amazing brains. I think I've met all of you, and I know you do. But here's an example of how amazing everyone's brain is. I'm just going to say something, and I'm going to say something, and I'll bet that you haven't thought of it, but you will immediately be able to think of it. And so I just wonder about how your right foot is feeling. And so just that right foot, all of a sudden, you haven't thought about your right foot, but your brain can go zoom right down there. Now, or if I said, and you can do this and do time traveling, if I say, well, even with Rachel, what happened earlier today? What are 3 good things? And she can go zoom right back to the past. And if I were to ask about the future, your brain can take you to a future time. For many of you, if I just said kindergarten teacher, your brain goes there, right? This is an incredible thing that we all have. So we're going to do an activity that is a tiny bit of an experience of a mindfulness activity. It's not going to be nearly as good as what Rachel experienced earlier today. It's going to be 2 minutes. And I want to just have you guys experience this independently, but all together. What I'd like you to do, and when I say ready, set, go, I'd like you to do this. Begin at 1, and then mentally count your out breaths. And so a way you might do this would be, I kind of say to myself mentally in, and when I breathe out, I say 1. In, 2, something like that. And so if you lose track during the 2 minutes, and it's possible, if you're sleepy, for sure, you might suddenly think, what number am I on? I can't remember what number I'm on. Even in this 2 minute period, it's possible you'll get distracted and you'll start thinking about, I feel kind of thirsty. And so those kinds of things will happen. If you get distracted or lose track, just start over at 1. But also, and this is the big trick, I want you guys to be mindfully non-judgmental of yourself for losing track. In other words, this is not a contest for you to count as high as possible. All this is just a 2 minute example of breathing meditation. Okay, I know many of you have already done this kind of thing, but I think it's a fun thing for us to talk about debrief. And so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to say, all right, for the next 2 minutes. I'm looking for my timer. Begin, ready, set, go. Okay, now I'm going to start talking again and just say that it's been 2 minutes. And you guys looked like you were all doing it, which is amazing. Good work. As we discuss this, I want to just focus in on a couple of things that are true about the brain, about the mind. The fancy yogi people say the mind is like a yapping dog, and so that we need to give it a bone. We need to have it something, give it something to chew on so that it will stop barking at us. Now, that's often called a mantra. Some people in sort of the more new age genre call it an anchor. And it can be just your breath, right? I gave you 2 different mantras or anchors. One was the counting, the other one was the breath, but it could be just the breath, and that would work fine. And it could be just the counting, and that would work fine. Or it could be something visual that you imagine. Or it could be a more traditional mantra word like Om or something like that. And what's really important is that you're able to balance how much you care about being mindful with not caring at all. Okay. And that's really, I think, the trickiest and most important part. This kind of a mindfulness meditation, breathing meditation, can really help with insomnia, as long as you don't care at all about whether you fall asleep. If you're monitoring and expecting, oh, I should fall asleep when I do this, or if your clients or students are thinking that they're using it like the counting sheep routine, and sometimes the counting is really a bad thing to do because it activates a part of our brain that is a little bit more associated with work and calculations, and that can be too much, and it can actually make us stay awake and feel like we need to keep counting. What's really important then is to give the brain something to chew on, to balance how much you care about it, to care enough that you're doing it, but to not care really that much about the outcome. And then the other physical part that is really important is to extend your out breath. Have your out breath be longer than your in breath. Now, you can also use a soothing object. You could use a little silky piece of fabric that you keep in your pocket, or something that you've associated calmness or soothing with. The object there is to activate your parasympathetic nervous system and to be a little less mentally jumpy, right? Because if your parasympathetic nervous system is engaged, we tend to have our brains calm down a little bit also. And then the last piece is back to the whole idea of non-judgmentalness and expectation. Remember, when you practice mindfulness, it's only practice. It does not make perfect. You will not be perfect at it. You will never be perfect at it. And that's part of the point, is to be totally accepting of even your failures when you make an effort to engage in mindful meditation. All right, so I'm going to stop the share, just see if you guys have anything related to that experience that you want to share, or anything related to my little post-experience discussion.
I wanted to share about how I was trying not to be competitive, because I can almost not help being competitive about things. It's like I have to get to a high number, right? And then so I was like, oh yeah, try not to do that. And then I noticed that I was being judgmental about being competitive. So then I was like, okay, let's try to just accept competitiveness and let it go. But then as I got to the higher numbers and my brain started to wander a little bit, I noticed what pulled me back was this competitiveness of trying to get to the highest number possible. So then I was like, oh, well, I guess there's some value in the competitiveness, because it's like part of what motivates me to invest, right? So when you said that about the balancing of caring and not caring, that's what came to mind. How there are these, yeah, I think that is self-explanatory. I don't need to summarize.
Well, what I love about what you're saying, Wendy, is that all that happened in our 2 minutes, right? Our 2 minutes of breathing meditation. And my response to that is fantastic, wonderful, that you both were able to do the breathing, stay with it, and also notice your thoughts and try to manage your thoughts and then like your thoughts. And, it's sort of all that stuff happening. I would bet if I look out here, anybody else have a similar experience to Wendy where you noticed things? Tom, you're raising your hand. Dennis? Okay. Kelsey? I got to about 6 or 7, Wendy, and I thought to myself, okay, how am I going to what's my next thing I'm doing to debrief, right? And then I did a couple of breaths and I thought, crap, I have to go back to 1. And then I thought, no, I'm just going to start back at 7, right? So I was oppositional with my own instructions in my head as I'm experiencing it. All fine, right? All fine. Just part of the human experience and important to accept. All right. Any other comments about the experience?
I find myself just staying at 1 intentionally. Because I was like,
Nice.
It's going to be impossible for me not to have a single thought besides counting. And the best thing to do in this situation is just maintain 1. And in so being in 1, that is the mantra. And that is going to be more present. And then there's no expectation.
Nice.
And it worked real well, I thought.
Nice. And 1 is a beautiful meditation mantra. It's actually been researched by Herbert Benson. And 1 works just as well as Om. So kind of interesting. Another thing that it reminds me of, Austin, is that I used to do this kind of goofy thing with all the Trapper Creek youth, 16 to 24-year-olds who I would meet with in my consultation there. And I had dozens of kids who came to me because they were having insomnia. And I would teach them this, and I would teach them, and I would do some breathing together, and then I would say, and so count, and if you lose track, go back to 1. Oh, and then I would finally say, oh, it doesn't matter. Actually, just stay at 1. That's fine. Just stay at 1. And I would do this in this kind of routine that was a little bit hypnotic, right? And by the end, I think they were just like, oh, I guess I'm just supposed to breathe and never even count my breaths and my mind will wander. But anyway, it was, and they responded really well to just breathing and saying the number 1. So, yeah. Cool. Thank you for sharing, Austin. Going to jump back to the screen. So we have 2 tools now. We have the little mindfulness tricks, and we have the 3 good things. Now we're going to talk about savoring. Savoring has quite a ton of research on it. Savoring is the deliberate effort to extend and expand positive experiences. The research is really clear. It improves your mood and it increases your satisfaction with life. Who does not want to do that? And so, but this is the hard part of savoring is, I mentioned when I was talking with Rachel about her self-awareness, you have to be aware of the fact that you want to savor, right? You have to have reminders. Oh, wait a minute, I want to savor. You might savor, track, review fun that you've had during a day. You might savor a particularly meaningful activity, right? Maybe you had an interpersonal connection and you said something to someone and they were touched and they let you know how important that was, and then you felt that. That's the kind of thing that you can savor that's interpersonal and emotional and not just fun. And so like the next time that Kelsey and Rachel run up to the L, they can savor the moment when they get there. And they can also savor it together. And they can savor the time together that they have. Just like the three good things, the opposite of savoring seems to be the more natural way humans function. Instead of celebrating our moments at the top of the M or the L or the mountain, or a small, meaningful experience with one of our parents, instead of celebrating those, a lot of times we dampen them, we spoil them, and instead we savor our mistakes. Now, this is an interesting thing. Savoring is the easiest way to kind of capture savoring is with food, because we all occasionally, hopefully, will savor the chocolate or the wine or the cheese or something that we really love, like a croissant, and a lot of times we gobble it down, right? It's gone, boom. But we know the difference between gobbling it down and savoring it. And so that's really important. But all too often, we get stuck chewing on the negative experiences, right? They call it ruminating, and so it really is kind of a gustatory analogy. And so I'm guessing if I said anybody ever gets stuck chewing on the negative and spoiling the positives, that most of you would naturally say yes. Now, I want to teach you guys also an easier form of savoring. And this is a mutual savoring. It's when you find a friend, and I want you to think about doing this sometime in the next day or week. Find a friend and do a little simple remember when activity. And what the research shows on this is that doing a remember when mutual savoring activity will improve mood and hope. It also increases the likelihood of you repeating a positive experience, because it increases the planning. That it just sort of naturally increases the planning. So I need a volunteer to do mutual savoring. Actually, I'm going to pick 3. So this is my time when I'm going to pick somebody. Okay, and it's a mutual savoring thing. All right. And so you can pass. If I pick somebody and you think, oh, no, I don't want any part of this, you can pass, but it'll be great. And so, of course, Kelsey, you know I'm going to pick you, right? What do you think? Yeah? Yeah. Fantastic. I'm picking Kelsey for a reason. So you'll all know soon. I'm going to turn into the speaker view. Here we are again. If you guys don't know, Kelsey and I did a role play on Monday. Okay, and I just want to do a little mutual savoring of that experience.
Great.
So Kelsey, when we did the role play, I was struck by one thing in particular, and I experienced it twice because I also watched the video afterwards. And when I kind of attacked you for using the word confused, you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. When I attacked you and you responded with the short and beautiful and accurate paraphrase. When I watched you the first time, I thought I saw this. And when I watched the second time, it was like there was so much self-discipline in who you are. And I don't know if that's an accurate feedback, but it was like there was this internal self-discipline because there were so many ways in which you could respond to me in that moment. And yet you took the whole context and you channeled yourself into, I thought, just an elegant and beautiful paraphrase. So
Thank you.
does that fit for you, that the idea that you are a really self-disciplined kind of person? Or, I mean, because that's just a guess.
I think that's very accurate. Yeah. Yeah, and I think in multiple forms, I'm pretty self-disciplined in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything you remember about that nice role play we did that you want to savor?
Yeah, I think that
Maybe that it's over.
yeah. I think for me, just like recognizing when transference happens, that like it's my responsibility to still be respectful to the other person, to the client,
Yeah.
and really keeping that in mind without feeling like I'm personally being attacked.
Nice. That sounds like a memory as well as something you want to remember.
Yeah.
And that fits perfectly with mutual savoring, in that oftentimes, even as we're talking about it, you're not just talking about that experience then, but you're talking about something that you took from it and that you might use in the future. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. All right. Can you believe that we're done?
Woo!
Woo! It was really not that bad. All right. Any quick questions for Kelsey or me, and before I pick my second person? Erin, you have?
Yeah. Would you say that like just sharing with something that you like with someone, is that like kind of a form of mutual savoring?
Right. So I was doing two things there at once. And I think what you're picking up on is that I was also giving Kelsey some positive feedback, right?
Mhm.
Positive feedback about our shared experience. And yeah, that's part of savoring. Absolutely. I mean, if you go camping with a friend and the friend does something funny or silly. I have an old story about a friend from back in the 1980s where we went camping, and there's this indelible memory. We reshare that with each other over and over again. He has kind of a bear phobia. He thought maybe it was a bear outside the tent, and he starts to make funny noises like, and then he says, John, grab the knife. And we got a knife that's like an inch long. It's got a blade that's an inch long. I'm like, what am I going to do? Cut my way out of the tent? I don't know. So we share that over and over again, and that it's both feedback for each other, but also a compliment. It's affection that goes back and forth about how much we enjoyed having that experience together, even though after he woke me up, I couldn't get back to sleep. So, I do think that the positive feedback naturally flows into the mutual savoring. It's like, I'm glad I went camping with you. You gave me an experience I will never forget.
And what about like just like I like something like a song or a video or something, and then I send it to someone because I think they'll like it, or like I want to know if they like it. Is that kind of like?
I think what you're doing when you send it to someone is you're creating a mutual savoring opportunity, right? And I think sending it is a nice, thoughtful act, and that's a positive all by itself. It's a positive interpersonal act if you think, oh, I bet Teague would like this, and so you send her some music thing, and she gets it, and she feels good about getting it from you. It's like giving a gift, and then you feel good about, oh, I think she'll really like it. And then if she does, that's frosting on the cake.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So, can I pick someone else? You guys okay with that? So Austin, would you mind? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go into the speaker view with you, Austin. So here we are. So Austin, I just want to savor something that I think we experienced together last week. I got to have an advising session with you, and of course, I met you before in my office, before you were admitted to the program. And I just had this experience with you. I just enjoyed talking with you last week. And what I thought was really cool is just the kind of positive vibe and energy you have. I don't know that you belong in this happiness workshop because you've already got it. I'm just kidding there.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Anything about our time together that you savor? I mean, I was touched by, like, I can't remember when you said it, but it's like, oh boy, I get to have advising, and it was like to have somebody look forward to advising with me and actually say that was like, wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty nice.
And it was honest too. I think that, the majority of our relationship has mostly been teacher-student. It's been amazing to connect one-on-one and just to get on a more personal level and learn more about you and share that. I don't know. It felt really special to me. I felt pretty connected to you beyond just, student to professor.
Nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, and so this is our mutual savoring. And all I want to do is just to do that with you. And so you're done with me picking you as a volunteer. You have been perfect. All right. Thanks. I'm going back to the gallery view. Okay. Now, any quick thoughts or questions for Austin or me?
I just noticed that when you do this, it's like it automatically creates like a sense of joy in both of you. Like even though you're speaking the positive to someone else about them, it doesn't just make them feel that positive, that joy, but it's like as soon as they start to feel it, then you react to it and then you get that feeling of joy as well. So yeah, you're not just giving it to them, it's giving you joy as well.
Absolutely. And that's one of those reciprocity things that seems to automatically happen when you share a positive experience with someone. Obviously, it works way better if you both feel positive about each other, right? I mean, I know we probably all have had the experience of awkwardness where someone maybe wants much more connection emotionally with you, and you kind of feel like, oh, I got to have a little more distance here. I mean, so that can happen too, and it can feel less mutually connecting. And because I think that's the other thing, there's a reciprocity of joy that goes back and forth, but there's also this interpersonal connection and a little bit of a getting closer that happens in the process. And of course, obviously, that's going to work best if you have relatively mutual interest in connecting with one another, right? Yeah. Okay, I'm just going to do two of those because I know time is always something I have trouble with. And so I'm going to go back to the slide show. And now I'm going to slip into something different. We're going to come back to savoring in a few minutes. But here's what I wanted to, here's one of the things that I thought could happen when I do this. The next issue after savoring that we're going to talk about is social comparison. Social comparison is identified in the happiness literature as one of those things that makes us feel worse. It's partly the Facebook phenomenon, right? We see everybody in all their happy families and relationships and maybe Instagram or whatever it is that you do on social media. It's so easy to move into what the people in AA call compare and despair, right? Because social comparison can become conscious and unconscious. It can be a malignant process that makes us feel worse about ourselves and consequently creating depression, anxiety, despair. Social comparison happens. And one of the reasons I wanted to do mutual savoring was because I pulled Kelsey and Austin out of the crowd. And I was thinking, I bet there's a chance, maybe not, that other people might have thought, I wonder if John would have picked me, or why didn't he pick me? And I looked down the left-hand column of my screen. I saw Tom and Allie and Dennis and Bridget and Clara. And I thought, oh, I could have picked any of them, right? But it's natural for people to notice what other people get. Maybe it's a product of sibling rivalry, right? It's natural for us to notice that. And so I wanted to follow savoring and mutual savoring in particular with social comparison, because I feel really good. I think about all of you, but I purposely picked out Kelsey and Austin because I think they're wonderful, but also because I wanted to try to trigger or activate a little bit of social comparison. And as soon as Bridget then makes a comment, I think, oh, there's so many ways that I could have picked Bridget out and said really nice things to her. So now we're going to move to an activity, and we'll do this activity, then we'll take a break. But this activity is a thing that that I created with a colleague in Missoula, probably 25 maybe years ago. And it involves, I kind of call it a game. It's called What's Good About You? One person asks the other person the same question 10 times. Here's how it goes. If Aaron is my partner, I say, Aaron, what's good about you? Aaron says back, I am an excellent student. Okay. I then repeat what she says. I say, I am an excellent student. In her voice, I write it down. I say, thank you. And then I say, Aaron, what's good about you? And I do that 10 times, right? Because I want 10 different things. I want Aaron to say 10 different things. And I tell her at the beginning, the only rule on what you say is you can't give me the same answer twice. Okay. So even if Aaron says, I don't know, or I've run out, I'll say, I don't know. Thank you. What's good about you? Okay, so it's this kind of persistent focus on one person generating 10 or maybe 9 good things. Okay, does that make sense to you guys? That's the activity. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pair you up at random. You're going to have a partner. I want you to do this both directions. And so if Erin and I were doing it, I might ask her, what's good about you? And then write down her responses. And so hopefully you have something to write with, or you might type it on your computer as you're listening. And then say thank you and go through this. And so I would do it. I would ask Erin 10 times. And then when that finished, then Erin would say, okay, John, what's good about you? Okay. And she would ask me that question 10 times and she would take the notes, right? Okay. So you guys ready to get broken into pairs? I'm going to do the amazing breakout room thing. I'm going to give you 8 minutes. I'm going to put the timer on. I'll retrieve you back into the main room together after 8 minutes. You may have a chance to debrief a little bit if you're really fast at this, and you can chat about whatever else. If you don't know each other, of course, introduce each other, introduce yourselves, and spend a minute getting to know each other in great depth, and then do the activity. All right, should we talk about what's good about you? I am pretty sure it was not a neutral experience for anybody. So let's just do a little debrief and then we'll take a 10-minute break and then we'll come back. So what was that like? Somebody tell me.
For
Erin?
me,
Go ahead.
Erin, and then Teague, and then Kate.
Okay. I was just gonna say, Tom and I both talked about like having some feelings of doubt, like, you know, saying these things and then being like, oh, but am I really that? So kind of the spoiling or the, you know, tricking yourself or something. So those kinds of feelings came up.
Yeah, you know, and I love that you admit that, and that Tom does too. And I bet that most of us, you know, when we say something boldly in an interpersonal scenario, right? It's not just you're alone, you're with Tom and you say, I have a great sense of humor, or whatever it is you say. It's like, well, maybe it's good, not great, or whatever. You know, you start to want to take it back, or you have some doubt. Now, this is a really natural phenomenon. And so when you're working with clients or students or yourself, one of the things that's true is, you know, that you're going to, if you do this activity with them or you have them do it with someone, you know that some of those doubts may pop up, and you know that that might mean that those doubts pop up regularly in their lives about things. Can I really do it? You know, can I really get a good grade in this class? Do I really have what it takes to get admitted to this program, or whatever it is, right? So doubt is one of those things that it's a little bit of a dialectic. It's like, well, we should explore that, but just not all the time, right? It's like there's a time and a place to explore our doubts. And then, but if we know it's coming up, if you know a doubt is going to come up, and it's going to come up in the midst of something, you should have a nice plan or a nice strategy for saying, okay, letting go, letting go of that doubt, because this is not my moment to explore it. I might do that later if I'm doing some personal counseling, right? Or I might do it with a good friend, talk about it, explore it, try to figure out the meaning of it. But we also need to handle it and just kind of put it aside sometimes. It's interesting, but very natural. Yeah. So I know that Teague, also, you had put your hand up.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Just a lot of self-doubt and almost searching for proof that I am these things. Yeah.
Okay. All right. You want to try something then right now?
Sure.
Yeah. So just you and me. Okay. I'm going to just go to the speaker view. All right. So Teague, tell me one of the things that you said was good about you.
I said that I like being outside.
Okay. How do you know that to be true?
I know that to be true because as soon as I step outside, I feel better. And as soon as I go back inside, I feel better.
Nice. The feeling better happens when you step outside and you carry some of it back with you into the inside.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So similar to my conversation with Rachel, I think that signifies really nice self-awareness, that you know going outside will help you feel. Yeah. How about another one? What's another one that you said was good about you?
That I am trustworthy.
How do you know that to be true?
I think that in my relationships, I know that other people can come to me if they're going through something and be honest with me, and I can hold that space with them and hold their confidence.
Okay. So it sounds like you've had that experience. I have been able to hold space for people and keep their confidence. Yeah. And so the phrase would be really kind of, I am a trustworthy person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where does that fit in your body when you think, I am a trustworthy person? Where do you keep it?
Like in my heart.
Okay. Yeah.
Too cheesy.
No, not too cheesy at all. So one of the reasons I want to help illustrate how these good things, it's natural to have the doubt. It's natural then to think, well, do I have evidence? You know? And so as a counselor, if I'm working with you, I want to ask you for your evidence. I might have evidence and I might say, yeah, I totally agree that you are very self-aware and that you're a trustworthy person, right? But so important for me to nurture your own judgment of yourself and to pull out your evidence for how you know it to be true. And then, I'm going to get to this a little bit later, it also can help people to notice where it is in your body, where you keep it, so to speak. It's kind of like having a little list of 10 good things about yourself. Maybe you keep it in your pocket, right? Or you keep it in something. Maybe you keep it on your phone, okay? And so you keep it with you. And that kind of tool can be sometimes an emotional regulator, right? So, because if you're in a scenario, you come out of a tough counseling session, right? Or you have a difficult interpersonal interaction with someone, or maybe you don't score as well on a paper or a test that you wish you had. All those can be emotionally dysregulating. Maybe somebody says something insulting to you, right? That's something that will happen over and over again to the students that you work with in schools. And so for them to have, wait, even though I got bullied and I was told really nasty things, I know right here, I keep it right here that I'm a trustworthy person, and that's important to me. So that's kind of what I wanted to illustrate. And I thought that your example was really good when you said that you started immediately thinking, well, what's the evidence for that? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Woo, 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 Teague. Another volunteer survives. Not bad at all. Okay, I'm going back to the checkerboard gallery view. Any comments about, any more comments? I know Kate had her hand up at one point, and I was just looking out there and I saw somebody raise their hand and I thought, oh, that's me. I'm raising my hand. I'm not going to call on myself, tempting as it is.
Yeah, I just was like in agreement with Aaron and Teague in the sense that I was like, kind of feel like I'm lying, but like, but I'm just gonna roll with it.
What's good about you? I'm a really good liar, and I just roll with it when I lie.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, what a great example of that sense of real self, right? Of the sense of is this my true self? Am I being totally 100% honest? All right, so I'm going to give you some feedback, Kate. Here's the feedback. I've got a number 11 that goes on your list. And number 11 is you are the kind of person who really cares about being honest with yourself, about yourself. What a cool quality. You are that kind of person. Otherwise, you wouldn't have referred to yourself as a liar.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. Appreciate it. All right. Now, any other comments and before we take a 10-minute break?
I just wanted to add, because no one else has said it, that I felt self-conscious, and my partner expressed this too, about saying the things I think are good about myself in front of another person. Not because
Yes.
I doubt that they're good, but because there's like a social anxiety about bragging and thinking good things about yourself.
Thank you, Wendy, for bringing that up, because the task, this activity is, it breaks a social rule, right? We're not supposed to, it breaks a cultural or social rule. We're not really supposed to brag. And unless you're talking with your mom and your mom really wants to hear all the good things that you did, right? In which case it's perfectly fine to brag about yourself and all the amazing ways that you're succeeding in the world. And your mom really wants to hear it, right? Except for in that kind of a context, it's socially inappropriate, maybe culturally inappropriate to brag and say 10 good things about yourself. So you're totally right. I think it's just a weird thing to ask people to do. And some people will not do it because of cultural issues. I remember an Asian biracial young man I was working with, and he said, well, we just don't do that. I just don't do that. And of course, I said, of course not. That's fine. Let's talk about, how come. And it was a great conversation about why he was not going to do that with me. And it was probably a better conversation about why he wouldn't do it with me and what it meant for him culturally than it would have been for him to actually tell me 10 good things. And so it would turn into a good conversation. But yeah, there will be that inhibition, and it is socially inappropriate.
So for me, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
For me, I'm not sure. I think this exercise is supposed to make you feel good about yourself, but for me, it was not very pleasant. As the list got longer, I've had more and more anxiety. If it was like 3 things, that would have probably felt good, but 10 was like too many.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that pleasant.
Yeah. And so we'll come back to this after the break. And so what I want to say, Wendy, is that that's a great example of if you were doing this kind of a thing with yourself or with a client, this is all grist for the mill of learning about oneself, right? And so, like I said, one thing doesn't fit for everybody. There's no perfect approach. And so in your case, I might say, well, then, okay, let's not do the what's good about you 10 times. Let's do it 3 times and just stay with that until it starts to feel, we don't want you to feel worse or uncomfortable. I don't think that's a terrible thing to avoid. I think it's just like self-knowledge. I know that I can say 3 good things, maybe keep those in my phone about myself, but I don't need 10, and making a list of 10 is just going to make me feel more anxious. So cool. We're going to take a 10-minute break, and now I'm going to go from the beginning. No, from the current slide. Yes. All right. So we just did the what's good about you. And obviously it will affect people differently. But I know one time, well, more than one time, in working with people and using this, what it became was a little bit like I was trying to create with Teague. It became a little bit of a self-regulation reminder card. And so I got to pair up with Paige, and I have a list of 10 great things about Paige. And I'm going to type them up and send them to her because she generated them. And so you certainly can do that if you want, or can do it with your partner. Not essential. But one of the things that I used to use this for in counseling was, okay, well, when there are times that you feel insecure, there are times when you don't succeed or you fail at something, and we all do fail sometimes. It's nice to have a ready-made list of all your good things to help you refocus and recenter and in some ways re-regulate emotionally. And then I always think, well, where do you keep it? Well, maybe you keep it in your wallet or your purse, or you keep it on your phone, but also people often keep it, as Teague said, you keep it in your heart. I'm a trustworthy person. That's right here. I know where it is. And so it's nice to give people what they call a little physical anchor. And like, maybe they say, I'm a really helpful person, and maybe it's in their hands. And so when they are feeling upset or down, they can rub their hands together and say, oh, wait a minute. I have this quality about myself. I'm helpful. And that's going to stay with me because that's part of who I am. Kind of reminders. So back to social comparison. And one of the reasons I followed social comparison with what's good about you is that there's some pretty substantial research on the differences between happy people and unhappy people. And one of the big differences is that happy people do less social comparison. Well, sure, they notice and they compare themselves with people sometimes. Nobody never does that. But they quickly kind of let go of caring very much about what other people are doing. And what do they do instead? And that's a really important question. And what they do is they lean hard toward internal self-evaluation. So Teague is evaluating herself as opposed to letting herself be vulnerable or too vulnerable to comparing and evaluating herself in the context of other people. And so that's another important concept for us to integrate into our own lives. If we catch ourselves, and I know I do sometimes, doing too much social comparison, it's a good cue to pull back and say, oh, wait a minute, what are my values? What are the things that are important to me? And how am I living those values as opposed to getting caught up in what other people are doing? And so that's a really, I think, useful way to combat or to deal with that tendency that we all have to get sucked a little bit too far into social comparison. So the next topic, and so as if you're keeping track, we got 3 good things. We got mindfulness meditation, we got savoring, we got dealing with social comparison, including what's good about you, or having some internal values and reminders. And now we're going to talk about responding to triggers, because we all get triggered. And it's good for us in the process of getting to know ourselves to make an activation plan, like, well, so let's say I get activated. Let's say there's something happens that I get affectively dysregulated, or I know in advance I'm going to get affectively dysregulated because I have to go into a difficult conversation with someone, which, by the way, I find really stressful. I think most people do. I worked with a guy who was a mediator once, and he was really interesting. He came to me and he said, John, I need to have a difficult conversation with you. And it was actually kind of cool that he framed it that way. It was like, oh, okay. And I felt like it really framed it and set us up to just work through the difficult conversation. And I appreciated that. And I learned a little bit about how maybe I can sometimes approach a difficult conversation too, just directly without beating around the bush and just feeling like it's a difficult conversation. But if you value someone, that was the other thing he said, is we have a difficult conversation. And one of the reasons I want to have a difficult conversation with you is because I really value the relationship we have. And I want it to continue in a positive way. Wow. Okay. I get that. But another thing to do when we get activated is to use distraction. And it's a little bit like what I was saying when someone said that some doubt came up, right? Of course, Erin said, I think, doubt came up as soon as she said something positive. Tom said, doubt came up. Now, again, sometimes it's the right time and the right place to explore our doubts and what they might mean. But other times, it's just good to distract ourselves, right? It's good to just distract ourselves, focus on something else. Maybe you can pull out your self-regulation reminder card, keep it somewhere. But also, there are many other things to use for distraction. We can use thinking distractions, right? We can be in that cognitive domain and we can just think of something that's pleasant intentionally. I could say to myself, well, I am a little bit activated. I'm going to intentionally think of a song that makes me feel good, right? I can just put that in my head. It may not work perfectly, but it might have a chance of pushing out the doubt and pushing out the dysregulation. All right, we're moving on to maybe the last big thing, although we'll talk a little more about positive distractions after we get done talking about gratitude. If I was into sales, I would ask, okay, who am I going to ask? I'm going to look at your names. I'm going to say, Isabella, do you want to increase your optimism? Do you want to improve your satisfaction with life? Do you want to be healthier? Do you want to exercise more? Well, Isabella, if your answer is yes, I got something to sell you, and that's gratitude. The evidence on gratitude is just like overwhelming. Intentional gratitude really makes people feel good. Now, we brushed up against it a little bit when I was interacting with Kelsey and Austin. Because in essence, part of what I was saying to Kelsey and Austin was, I value you. I'm grateful for you and how you are, right? And so that's a little bit of a grazing of gratitude. But typically what we want to do is to even be more specific and focused. Gratitude is a great thing, but like all the other things we've talked about, savoring in particular, our mind is almost always built up to count our hassles, right? Rather than our blessings. We think, and I remember a number of years ago, I had a couple of rough years professionally, maybe some personally. And I remember I was sitting down at the computer and I thought, I probably swore in my mind, used a little profanity, and I thought, this has been a really bad 2 years. I'm going to count up my rejections. I'm going to count up how many times I got rejected. That stupid frickin' American Counseling Association rejected several of my things, right? Anyway, so I'm thinking that, and so I start to count them up, and there's a lot. And so I just thought, I better stop. This is so stupid to count up my rejections. What am I, is this a little bit of a pity party, right? But we know that there is that tendency to count the bad things. And there'd been many rejections, but there also had been much more than that. And I had so many things to be grateful for, right? But I was just not even focusing on that. I was doing, and it reminded me, I was on a radio show in Kalispell, Montana, maybe 20 years ago, and they were interviewing me, and I thought it was about depression, and I said something about the sunshine, and oh man, people just started calling in and saying, Kalispell is terrible. We get more cloudy days than blah, blah, blah. And I remember I thought about this. I didn't say it, but that's like totally the wrong thing to do. You never want to count the cloudy days. That's like a recipe for depression. It is a complete recipe for depression. And if you catch yourself doing that, best to just change and start counting the sunny days. Different ways we can do gratitude. You can write a postcard, you can write a letter, you can write an email, you can write a text, or you can do it live, face to face, right? Usually, before you do gratitude, you need to make a plan. I mean, what are you going to be grateful for? Obviously, you feel it in your heart or in your whole soul and body. So you need to think about what you want to say. But then, and this is the hardest part about doing gratitude well, you just have to completely forget about the person's response. It's not about the person's response. If I want to say to Megan, who is tuning in from Virginia, that I'm grateful that she took the time to sign up and do this thing, I have got to be completely disengaged from caring about her response. Sure, I can't stop myself from caring about her response, but I can't have the gratitude be contingent on my getting the response I want. If Megan responds in a positive way to me expressing gratitude, then that's frosting on the cake, right? Because my goal was to deliver a gratitude statement in a way that meant something to me and hopefully means something to the other person. But let's not have that be part of the goal. Does that make sense to you guys? Good. We're going to do an activity. I'm going to have you guys in groups of about 4. And what I want you to do is to do a little gratitude talk time. In other words, who do you want to express gratitude toward that you have not yet? Okay. Or maybe even it is somebody you've already expressed gratitude toward, but you have something in particular you're feeling like would be meaningful for you to share. I want you to talk with your small group about how you would do it. And I want you to just notice or talk about dropping expectations about how the person should respond. In other words, what's your reason for expressing the gratitude? Why is it meaningful for you? Now, sure, it's really likely that it will be meaningful for the person that you express it to. But right now, it's your gratitude. You get to aim it towards someone and deliver it in a way that you think will be meaningful. And again, to you and maybe to them. All right, so you guys ready? I'm going to give you about another 8 minutes in these small groups. So talk pretty quickly. Well, maybe not. Maybe there's some more coming. All right. Well, welcome back, everybody. I would love to debrief gratitude. What was it like for you guys to talk about who you wanted to express gratitude toward and how you wanted to do it? Isabella, were you raising your hand?
I was, yeah.
Nice.
So I just wanted to say, like, it felt really almost fulfilling, I guess, in a way, if that makes sense. Just because remembering that you can give out these positive impacts to anybody you want to express gratitude to, and it doesn't matter how they respond. It's just about giving out that positive impact.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it feels, it sort of feels empowering, right? I mean, to be able to, but the other thing I think that you can experience just talking about it is just as you talk about how you would do it, it's almost like you're in touch with what it feels like to be grateful. Yeah.
One question that came up in our group had to do with letting go of the expectations of the reaction. And that in some ways, to me, that suggests that it's kind of about the giver. And, you know, the giver knows that studies show that expressing gratitude will be beneficial for them. So anyway, Teague brought up the idea that does the giving step, is that necessary at all? Or if you were to go ahead and write a letter, could you receive the benefits? Or do you kind of have to give it to that person? And yeah, is that a crucial part of the mix?
You know, I think the research has tried to address some of that because it is a complicated process, right? And so you're talking about two different things. One is just writing the letter. You feel good that you've got somebody to be grateful for, and it's all about you. But it's also about them. Now, if you deliver the letter, or you make the call, or you show up, then it might have that second impact. Not just about you recognizing I'm counting my blessings or my grateful relationships, but now I'm acting on it. And this is where it becomes a little bit of a paradox. Well, of course it matters how people respond, right? And that really multiplies the experience when, and when, you know, when we were talking, Erica identified how she might express gratitude in a written form because that would be a little different. And so that's it's really important to be thoughtful as if you're giving it the gift of gratitude, you want to give it in a way that somebody is going to feel good about it. And that requires kind of getting into their head and their experience and then delivering it in the way that you think that they would want it. It's like a good gift. And so what you really want to detach are any expectations that you have about how people should respond. But I do feel like it's at least a double dose of positivity. You know, Teague writes the letter. Oh, that feels good. Teague delivers the letter. Oh, that feels good, right? And so you get a chance to have, have the joy twice. Cool. Other comments? Okay, maybe we should just keep on rolling. You guys are doing great. If, of course, I hope you know that if you have a thought and you really feel moved to make a comment, that you can certainly do that anytime, and you don't have to wait for me to mention it. Okay. All right. So that was our debrief. We've done that. All right, let's talk about some positive distractions and meaningful distractions, okay? We've been through social comparison. It's a pain. Now, in a lot of ways, emotions are pain. You know, obviously anger, sadness, guilt, and fear are probably the big four painful emotions to feel. Now, we should not get into the habit of avoiding our emotions, right? We shouldn't just avoid them and find ways to distract ourselves, right? Because the emotions are important and it's good to explore them. They're there for a reason, right? On the other hand, like I've said several times, sometimes we just need a strategy or method to deal with it in the moment. So my question is, what songs? Now, this is a particular method using music or songs to amplify feelings. And you can do that with some of the negative feelings. You can certainly listen to some angry things, and or you can listen to some things that are a little melancholy. If you're feeling sad and you want to really feel those emotions, you can amplify your emotions by listening to some sad music purposefully, right? And then there are times when you can listen to a particular song or a kind of music that lifts your mood. Again, intentionally, it's all a little bit about emotional management or distress management. So I'm curious about what songs help to boost your mood. I'm going to see if this one's going to play because, whoops, I had a feeling it wouldn't play, but yeah, it looks like it won't. You know, I get so upset. You know, I got a nice technology thing. It's just perfect. So this green box right here is supposed to be a song. And so I'm going to just have to sing it for you guys. I mean, obviously that's the right thing to do in this situation, rather than just not have the song. So when I was in, now we used to call it junior high when I was young, not middle school. So I believe I was in 9th grade, and we had a particular basketball coach, Mr. Moen. And Mr. Moen was the most talented coach I ever had. He could motivate us. He taught us fundamentals. And before every game when we were in 9th grade, he played us the same song. And I'm going to sing a little bit for you right now, because I know that that could elevate your mood or it could cause you distress. I want you to notice, is it triggering or is it not triggering? You ready? Some of you guys will never have heard of this song. And so I'm going to just sing a little bit and then I'm going to stop and see if you've ever heard it. Jeremiah was a bullfrog, was a good friend of mine. Anybody? All right. Rachel, take over. Wait, no. Rachel sang in class for us earlier in the semester, and she led us in a little bit of singing. And so I'm not really serious about her taking over. So whenever I hear that song, or if I want to feel myself lift in my mood, I can listen to that once or twice or 3 times in a row and just have that joy to the world experience intentionally. And it takes me back to 9th grade basketball, which was not a completely great experience, okay? 9th grade, not a great experience. But that moment of him putting that music on and feeling the joy. Man, it was amazing. How about you guys? What's a go-to song that you know will increase or improve your mood? And you do not have to sing it. That's not part of sharing.
Miami by Will Smith.
Miami by Will Smith. Some people are laughing. I don't even know the song. You actually made Austin kind of fall backwards when you said that.
Oh, it's just so good. It's such a banger.
Yeah? All right, I'm writing it down.
Stacy's mom.
Who said that?
I did.
Stacy's mom? The song Stacy's Mom?
Yeah.
I don't know that one either.
She's got it going on.
Fountains
Oh,
of
Stacy's mom has it going on? This is really good. I feel like somebody's going to sing soon, and it's going to be a song I've never heard of. Who was that? Who was that?
That's Sober by Mahalia, and she is an absolute goddess. It gets me in the mode.
Nice. All right, couple more.
Semi-Charmed Life by Third Eye Blind.
Semi-Charmed Life. What is wrong with my musical background? I've never heard that one either.
I guarantee you have. It's the one that's like do 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 do.
Oh yeah. Good. I'm gonna be playing it. I'm gonna listen to it soon. All right, one more.
Okay, Love and Happiness by Al Green.
Al Green. I've heard of him.
Yeah. I listened to that when I was like driving in a snowstorm and really anxious one time, and I just kept playing it over and over again, and it helped me, and it still helps me.
Nice. Very nice. Music, so powerful, right? Smells, food, so powerful. So powerful. The smell of something that you long for can just relax you. And the smells that are associated with good relationships, right? I don't really even eat bacon, but when I smell bacon, I think of my grandmother, and because she would make it, and it's like, oh yeah, I remember that smell, and I can go back to when I was 7, and eating bacon by the pound, and yeah. So, music, smells. What are other kinds of experiences? I'm going back to the screen now, or to the presentation. What are some other experiences that you know will change your mood in a positive way, besides smells, besides songs?
Exercise.
Absolutely. Hardly anything better, especially if you like exercise. If you hate exercise, may not be a great fit for you, but it might be good to find some ways to move to improve your mood. Yeah.
Petting my dogs, or like playing with my dogs.
Oh yeah. There's a ton of research, not a ton. I don't even know what a ton of research would actually be. That'd be 2,000 pounds of research, and it doesn't really make any sense to say that. But there's significant research about pets, pet ownership, or just being in the room with a friendly dog, right? Lowers blood pressure. Now, the key is it's a friendly dog, right? It's not an unfriendly dog. That actually raises blood pressure. Great examples.
Dancing.
Some of my favorite dancing memories are dancing at weddings. And it's like, I don't know why, but at weddings, it's like people are so completely inhibition free. And yeah, it's a good time. Excellent. So I'm going to just bring us to conclusions, because I am to about the point where I want it to be. I have a few extra slides. They are at the end. They're called bonus slides. But I want to just do a little discussion here about the conclusions. And I call them stunning conclusions, but they're not stunning conclusions. These are just things that make perfect sense. Well-being, or eudaimonic happiness, as Aristotle would say, requires at the very least awareness. We heard that off and on today about with you guys being aware of yourselves and how you are and what you need to do to feel better. Intention, we have to really want or intend to do these things and weave that intention, not just to intention, but combine it with effort and reminders and persistence to actually weave these things into our lives as a practice. If you're working with students or clients or yourself, the thing to know is that, of course, all this is they're not single one-off parts of life experience. They're things that you weave into your life to make your mood better, to make your relationships better, to make your health better, right? And so it's an ongoing way of living your values. And that's really what happiness is all about. An ongoing way of living your values. So tell people you know, like Aaron, who already has, to take the art and science of happiness. I'm doing a little advertising here now, because it's a whole semester of focusing on and practicing and integrating these kinds of ideas into your lives. I know as grad students, it won't count as grad credit, but you might know some people. And here's one other last thing. I think I have another slide or two, but what do you want to remember? Tell me, what do you want to remember? This is a question I almost always ask people at the end of a counseling session. What's important to you? What do you want to remember about our time together? Obviously, you can put it in the chat box, or you could speak. I'd love to hear.
I'm thinking about just the list of 3 things that you're grateful for. That's so easy to do, and I could easily integrate it into my nightly routine.
Yeah, so simple and straightforward, and should be pretty easy. Now, here's the thing. Whenever I say easy, Cameron, I think to myself, it's always harder than I thought it was going to be. New habits are almost always that way. They're really tricky. Without a reminder, I find I don't do those things, right? It's like you got to write it on your hand, or, put something around your finger, or maybe have a reminder in your phone. I mean, those are all kinds of ways that you could remind yourself to do it. Having some kind of external stimulus to trigger that plan can be useful. Here's another thing, and Aaron learned this in the happiness class last spring. When you've done it, Cameron, one thing that helps is to take your fist and to go, yes, yes. Seriously, it's one of those physical and brain-based reinforcements that, they say it increases dopamine, and dopamine is an addictive neurotransmitter. I mean, obviously there's way more than that going on in your brain than just dopamine, but the point is, it's doing something physical to celebrate that you've accomplished a small task that you wanted to accomplish, will help increase the chances of repeating it. Kind of cool. Anybody else? Thanks.
I think for me, it's just the reminder that happiness is a practice, because I think it's really easy to just feel like I'm not happy. It must be the way that I am, et cetera, and kind of go down a negative spiral.
Yeah. And, we are built certain ways, right? I mean, some people tend to be a little more pessimistic than others, but the research would suggest that despite genetic set points around depression, optimism, pessimism, that there is quite a bit of variability that we have control over using our behaviors. And so, yeah, rather than just thinking of yourself a certain way, to recognize, oh wait, this is partly incorporating certain things into my lifestyle. Nice. I see several people have posted something in the chat. One last thing I would ask you to do in the chat box would be, if you have something in particular, now I'm going to read them. 3 good things: mindfulness meditation, savoring, dealing with social comparison, what's good about you, responding to triggers, gratitude, positive distractions. So we covered kind of 8 things. And so if there's one that sticks out that you think, oh yeah, that's the one I want to incorporate, I'd love it if you put it in the chat box. And now this is part of behavior change too. Not only does yes help to reinforce it, but research on public commitments is pretty strong. And that if you write something down in a chat box, even though it's just a little chat box, you're writing it, you're owning it, you are kind of making it more likely to have it happen in your life. All right, thanks. Looks like a bunch of people are posting. Anybody else want to say something before I go back to the slides?
I just want to say that talking about all this happiness makes me feel happy.
Yes. Well, good. Really glad to hear that. It does remind me that you guys will get a link sent to you in just a little while to do the follow-up or post-test questionnaires. I hope that you'll all fill those out within 24 hours or so. I mean, obviously tonight it's getting late, but at some point in the next 24 hours, just to fill it out again. Dan, I know, will appreciate it, and so will I. So I'm going to go back to my screen. Stunning conclusions. And this is my favorite cartoon of all time. You can see the guy, goofy looking guy, and his friend has a body cast on. And the visitor says, "Man, Bernie, you're a mess. You ain't itching anywhere, are you? Man, I had a cast on my leg years ago, and boy, did it itch. Drove me crazy." You know what I'm saying? Because you can't scratch it. Don't think about it. Itching. Don't think about itching, Bernie. It'll drive you nuts. Okay. What's that about? This is about the power of suggestion. And so I want you guys to know, don't think about happiness, because once you start thinking about all the things you could do, you won't be able to stop yourselves from doing 3 good things. You won't be able to stop yourselves from savoring the moment and doing mutual savoring. It will just start to happen over and over again. So be careful. You might end up feeling happier. A couple of resources. You guys know I have a blog, but also Rita and I did. Rita and I did, and she might be listening. And we did a corny series this last, I think at the end of the summer, called "Happy Habits for Hard Times." And it looks like it's not just a series, it's a seriers. Somebody misspelled that, and I'm happy to say that it was me. So anyway, if you want, you can obviously, if you just Google College of Education, University of Montana, Happy Habits, you can find the video series. It's pretty corny. I'm just saying, but and neither of us sing at all when we're doing it. So, all right, there are a number of bonus slides. We're not going to cover those, but you can have them. I will email the slides to you at the same time as I email the link for the post-test questionnaire. And unlike me, I planned to end a little bit early because I thought that might make you guys happy. Any final questions before we stop for the night?